Hi, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for joining us today. This is the last video of the last day of the Indiana General Assembly. I'm recording this on Thursday, but you will see it on Friday. And today, as I record this on Thursday, they are expecting the General Assembly to end tonight. It could be very late tonight. By the time you see this video, you've probably seen some news about what happened today. And as of today, the last day of the session, there's a lot still up in the air. Numerous bills we're watching in the conference committee process, and those things happen very quickly. It's very hard to tell what's going on. It's kind of why I'm dressed this way. Me being down at the State House today doesn't have much of a purpose because it's all behind the scenes, backroom deals, negotiations between the House and Senate, sponsors and authors of bills in conference committee. And they kind of show up with the changes and then they agree to them and vote on them. And a lot of times they don't agree and a bill will die. So we're watching to make sure that's not happening. And we've got bills where we've got language that's being bumped around to different places. So I want to kind of step back and just kind of go over something that I thought might be a little educational. And then next week I will talk about a lot in my weekly email about the victories we had this session. We have a lot of them, and talk about some things that maybe happened today. On the last day of the session next week. Again, I'm recording this on Thursday. You're watching it on Friday, and the session should be over by the time you see this. So, but I want to talk about something. As you may have heard this week, the one bill that they have to pass constitutionally is the state budget. They came up with a deal on that Wednesday evening, and I thought I'd just step back and talk to you a little bit about our state budget, because I've got some interesting numbers that I think are educational. And I know a lot of people are watching about property taxes, and maybe you're upset with property taxes, the cut that was made maybe not being big enough. The governor has said this is a multi-step process. He wants to keep going on this. I hope he does, of course, because my assessments have gone up just like yours have too. And property taxes are significant. We're also concerned about local government raising taxes, but this is a very tight budget. As you know, too, something critical that I've been talking about throughout these videos is we really wouldn't know what the budget would be like until the forecast came out this month. Well, the forecast did come out, and it showed up to a 2.3, 2.4 billion shortfall over the next 2 years in the two-year budget. A lot of that might be fear over the tariff issue. That may not actually happen. And in fact, I'll give you an example of something that I think is good about the budget that kind of overlooks that shortfall. And that is not the first year of the budget, but the second year of the budget, the state will move to give families universal school vouchers. That means there's no income cap anymore. Right now, about over 90% of families can get a voucher for a private school or charter school under our voucher program. This would make this basically 100%. Anybody who wants a voucher can get a voucher. Now, the good news about that is, I think what that does most importantly is parents don't have to wonder, can I qualify for a voucher? Can I get some type of voucher as a percentage of my income to send my child to a private school? The answer is yes, regardless of your income. But how much that is does depend a little bit on your income. But it takes away the confusion that might prevent parents from checking into vouchers. So if you have a private school you'd like to send your child to, you may qualify, or you will qualify next year for a voucher. You may already qualify because over 90% of the public does qualify. The income goes up to over $200,000 in your household income. You can still qualify for a school voucher. Now the problem, as I've mentioned before, is there aren't enough private schools. Most of them have waiting lists, they're full. We do have another bill though that helps in this, and that is regarding accreditation, make it easier for startup private schools to get accreditation so they can receive vouchers much faster than that. So that's a good thing about the bill. That's one area where the budget forecast, they kind of said, well, let's forget this and let's go ahead and do this because if we wanted to do this, we'll just delay it a year. But let me talk to you about the budget, because I think this is very interesting, because you're going to hear a lot about the partisan divide over the budget. Are we spending enough here? Are we spending enough there? We're not spending enough here or there. There's always complaints about schools not getting enough money. So let me talk to you about the budget. The next 2-year budget, K through 12 spending will increase by almost 5% by end of this new budget in 2 years. Here's what's interesting. K through 12 spending, education spending, makes up 47% of our entire state budget. And when you include spending on higher education, that's another 9%. So 56% of our state budget goes to fund public schools and colleges. The next largest item in the budget is Medicaid, which consumes 22% of our budget. And you add to that the next largest item, which is 8% for health and human services projects. That's 30% there. So these two areas alone make up 86% of the budget. That's a massive part of our budget going for education and for health care, Medicaid, health care, we could say welfare in some instances. But you only 2% of our budget goes to public safety. If you add another 5% that goes for corrections and prisons, then you're up to most of the budget. 6% of that remaining budget goes to general government funding. Add all those together and you've got 99% of our budget. Those areas of education, health and Medicaid, public safety, and then government funding, which is only 6%, and you're at 99% of our budget. So, I don't know what your perceptions were about how much, we hear, I'll just say it, a lot of schools talk about their lack of funding or how little they get. Well, you got to remember too, 46% or 48%, I think it is 48% of property taxes also go to the schools. There's an enormous amount of money going to schools. In fact, since 2014, our spending on education since just 10 years ago, 2014, 11 years ago, has gone up 46%. Now, how have our test scores done in those last 11 years? Have they increased? Have they decreased? They certainly haven't gone up 46% as the funding did. So it goes back to the old argument that we often make and often see when you compare states, that more money doesn't automatically mean better education. And I'm not picking on teachers, because something else that's worth knowing is an enormous chunk of funding going to public schools is not going to teachers, it's going to administrators. The number of administrators and non-teaching staff, which in many schools outnumbers teachers, has grown up dramatically this century, in the last 30 years, even in the last century. The administration staff has exploded, schools have gotten bigger, I would say more bureaucratic, and we think all this money is going to teachers. Well, it's not. A lot of it's going to things that are peripheral to what you may think of as classroom instruction. So I hope we can address that someday. A lot of those decisions are made locally. But again, years ago, I'd say 10 to 15 years ago, I saw a statistic that Indiana was the third highest state in the nation for education spending in terms of the percentage of our budget, which again is 56% of our budget goes to education. So it's the single biggest item by far. Another thing that's kind of interesting is that all state agencies have been cut by 5% in this budget because of the shortfall. Actually, they're preparing for a 10% cut. They may hold another 5% if the budget projections are accurate. But right away, 5% is cut. The other way that they're making this shortfall up, which you've heard about, is a cigarette tobacco tax of $2, I think, a pack or a carton on cigarettes. And that's going to make up about $900 million. One news that is good, again, the $1.2 billion property tax cut, they're saying that will probably equal about $200 for the average family, maybe $300 if that. Hopefully that will help some. A lot of people I'm hearing their property taxes have gone up much more than that, but that's, I guess, something to be thankful for. Another thing that I think is positive about our state that should be talked about is that we have the highest gross domestic product increase, which is production increase, since COVID of any of the other Midwestern states. We've gone up 9.3% since COVID. That's 3 times more in Illinois, No surprise there. But it's twice that of Ohio and 40% higher than Michigan's gross domestic product increase. So there, in the big picture, I know there's a lot of waste in state government, but in the big picture, this is a pretty tight budget, and Indiana is doing pretty well fiscally as a state, and I think our budget is pretty tight. But again, that's not really an area AFA deals with a lot. Some of the areas that we're really watching, and there were some things in the budget I want to talk to you about later that are specific line items for some things in the pro-life world that are very positive that I'll talk about after the session officially ends. I don't want to red flag that, but to the left to attack. But we have succeeded in getting some funding that I think will save lives of the unborn children and will help women in crisis pregnancies. But let me close by just talking about a few things that may or may not be in the news today. Yesterday, the governor, Wednesday for me, the governor signed the parental rights bill. That was one of our top priorities. Senate Bill 143 has been signed into law, elevating parental rights. There was also a bill signed that says it's very important, especially if you look at what's going on in some of the blue states. We have language in a bill that states that referring to your child in their biological sex, regardless of their gender confusion, is not considered child abuse. It's not considered neglect. What this means with these two bills, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for DCS to take away a child from a home just because there's a disagreement over a child's gender confusion. So that's a very positive thing. We also have a bill that I expect to, from what I'm hearing, happen, and that's one we've championed as well, and that's a school transparency bill on sex education, so parents know what the schools are teaching their child. It requires the school board to approve whatever they choose to teach on sex education and to post that on the school website so parents can see a description of what's being taught. It's transparency, doesn't tell a school what to do, but does tell them that you must inform parents about what's being taught in school. And anything not approved by the school board cannot be brought in or snuck in, which is also a problem we've run into. The school board members get confronted in the grocery store, hey, why was my child taught about this in the third grade? The school board didn't know they were being taught about gay sex or something like that. We hope this bill will put a stop to that in many cases. So those are just 3 bills that have happened in the last 48 hours, very positive, that we fought for. Again, I mentioned too the accreditation bill. I believe that's on the governor's desk. That makes it easier for Christian schools or private schools to get accredited for vouchers. And so a whole host of bills that have small things in it that we're watching. One bill that I don't know at this moment will happen, it was moved out of a bill, but I think we're okay, is regarding preventing local governments from sponsoring or funding obscene performances. And that shouldn't be legal to begin with, but it's always good to put that in code. And so as a preventative measure to keep certain things out of city parks or off city property that are deemed obscene to children. So that's another thing we're watching. Overall, as I said, it's been a pretty good session. There's always things I wish they would address that we'll come back with next time. But overall, I've got about 8 to a dozen bills I think I'll mention next week in Wednesday's email, and I think you'll be encouraged about the things that we've accomplished with your help by contacting your legislator. And we'll update you on all those in both our main newsletter and in our Wednesday email. So look forward to that Wednesday. And then next week I will do a video as well, recapping in detail all the positive things we've seen happen this session. And again, thank you for your involvement. Your phone calls and emails to legislators make my voice stronger down there when I talk about the things that you care about as well that affect families. So thank you so much for your support of AFA, for your civic involvement. It's so important. And again, we thank the Lord for the victories we had. We'll stay in the fight, and we will keep working on issues throughout the year that affect your family. So again, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.